you're a cancer survivor and you think and live your life through that lens. So I think that's a new lens that I got, cancer survivor, that I'm planning to fully use as a voice for patients and as a voice for genomics in Canada. So it's not going to be the same, Lester. It's not going to be the same.
Hi, my name's Lester, and welcome to another episode of What's with RWE. As you can see, actually, unfortunately, my usual co-host, Costas Trakas, is not with us here today. He's probably off fishing somewhere or enjoying at least the maybe spring break. But I do have a very special co-host with me today, and that's Suzan McNamara, who's my colleague as well. And the reason why we brought Suzan on is because we have another very special guest with us today, Catalina. So, Suzan, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit first?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Lester. So, hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Exactis. I've been with Exactis since the beginning in 2014. And I'm also a cancer survivor. So, I was diagnosed 26 years ago with a really rare form of leukemia called chronic myeloid leukemia. And at the time, I was given 3 to 5 years to live. However, thanks to my persistence and research, including a petition, I was able to get on a phase 1 clinical trial with the drug called imatinib or Gleevec, which is a targeted drug. That drug ultimately saved my life, and I'm still on it today, doing really well. And with that experience, that led me to obtain my bachelor's degree in molecular biology and a PhD in experimental medicine. So today, I'm very honored to be part of this podcast because we have a very special guest, Dr. Catalina Lopez-Correa. And Catalina is also a cancer survivor, and she's one of Canada's leading advocates for genomics. She's currently the Chief Scientific Officer at Genome Canada and has also held CSO and VP positions at Genome BC and Quebec. She holds a medical degree from Columbia, a master's degree in human genetics from France, a PhD in medical biosciences from Belgium, and a mini MBA from McGill University. Catalina, welcome, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne and Lester, for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here today.
That's great. So let me kick it off. We have a lot of questions around your career and also your cancer journey. So starting with your career, and I know this is a big question, but what was your journey to becoming the CSO at Genome Canada?
Yeah, big question, and like everything, it takes many like a journey, many steps to get to where I am today. As you mentioned, Susan, I initially studied medicine, but I always was driven by curiosity and interested more about the biology than the clinical aspects of medicine. And that led me to leave the country, leave Colombia, and do initially a master's and then a PhD in genetics. And after all these, many years in academia, for my first job, I decided I wanted to move into the private sector. So I went into a biotech company initially in the UK. And then after a couple of years with biotech companies in the UK, I got the opportunity to work with Decode Genetics, which is also a private sector biotech company, but based in Iceland, in Reykjavik. And they were one of the first to develop a biobank and start sequencing at a population level. At the time, they were initially microsatellites, but then, of course, after they were doing all the sequencing, that was a unique experience to go really into a population level. And then from there, I moved into the US to work with the company Eli Lilly on their pharmacogenetics and really get to see all corporate America and the big players in the pharmaceutical industry and early days of the clinical implementation and implementation in drug discovery and development of genomics. That was again very exciting. And we moved to immigrated to Canada in 2008 when I got the position with Genome Quebec initially. And that all led, I spent about 8 years at CSO, VP, Scientific Affairs at Genome Quebec, where I got to interact with many of your colleagues at the company. And then after that, I moved to BC, did work also with CSO. But during the pandemic, I got the opportunity from Genome Canada to lead the Canadian COVID Genomics Network. That was quite a unique experience of implementing genomics at a pan-Canadian level with that emergency we had with the pandemic, sequencing the virus. So that was a unique experience. And that led, after that position evolved into the CSO position at Genome Canada. So again, a long journey, but I will say, even though, many countries, many different companies, many sectors from the private to the non-for-profit, academic and all that, at the end of the day, the conducting field of all that has been really genomics. And I will say the conducting is the DNA, conducting all these dots, connecting all these dots. Yeah.
Just for just assuming that there's billions of people watching Catalina right now, is maybe you can walk us through what is Genome Canada? Just obviously, as us Canadians, myself and Suzan, who both are from the genomics field as well, we know who Genome Canada is. But maybe you can talk a little bit about, like, what does Genome Canada do? What is the reason for existing for Genome Canada?
Absolutely, Lester, and yeah, and totally agree that for us it's like part of the family here in Canada, but it's not always so clear, and it's also not so clear when we talk about Genome Canada and we talk about Genome Quebec and Genome British Columbia and the Genome Centers. What is the relationship? So, Genome Canada is a federal funding agency. Basically, they were created to support. They were created when the first human genome was sequenced 23 years ago, and they were created really with the objective of supporting genomics across Canada and in all sectors of the economy. So it's not just about human health. We have projects. We have about 60% of projects in human health, but we have also projects in agriculture, biodiversity, climate change, environment, you name it. Mining, we have projects with the mining sector. All sectors are covered. Basically, where there is life, there is DNA. What there is DNA, there is genomics, and what there is genomics, there is Genome Canada supporting and trying to promote the use of this technology. And then Genome Canada works in close collaboration with the genome centers that get funding from the federal government, but also from the provincial government. So Genome Quebec, I was there for 8 years. They build the capacity in the province of Quebec. Genome BC, British Columbia, same for British Columbia, and we have one in each of the provinces. So it's a unique model that really works in synergy between the federal and the federal level and the provinces to really build the capacity and amplify the power and the promise of genomics across the country.
Great. Thanks a lot for laying that out. I'm sure people were, even in the sector, were confused about a little bit about this. So I appreciate you walking through that. Absolutely. Thank you very much. So, out of curiosity, because you mentioned that you worked at Decode, right? And then back in the day, and Decode, for those of you who are not familiar with Decode, I do believe it was purchased by Amgen at some point in time, right? But they were really at the forefront of genomics. Like, they were doing crazy stuff before anyone thought was possible. So maybe as a fellow genomics enthusiast, like, walk us through, like what were those times like? Because you were absolutely at the bleeding edge at that point in time. Like, how did it feel to be a part of that?
Yeah, well, Lester, so exciting. And I remember when I went for the interview, I was living in London, went, flew to Reykjavik for the interview with, the leadership at Deco Genetics. And I remember when they told me, they say, okay, now we're going to visit the factory. They didn't say the lab, the factory. And the factory is where they had all these PCR machines and Sanger sequencing to do the microsatellites. It was really like a factory. I've never seen that many PCR machines in one room. It was like science fiction for me. And I was in the world of genomics, coming from well equipped and well funded labs in Europe. But seeing that again was like science fiction. And then let's visit the biobank. And the biobank, oh my goodness, the biobank was, security was with, it is iris, or anyway, it was like super secure. And then it was all managed with a robot, like a robot hand that will, you will enter in the system at the time. That was the year 2000. So 2001 to 2005 I was there, so early days. The human genome was not sequenced yet, fully sequenced or anything. So you will just enter a system in your computer and say, I want a 96 well plate with samples from that many diabetic patients with that many controls or whatever. I need this, and the robot will go and look for those samples and prepare your plates. That was, again, science fiction. I was like, oh my goodness. So it was, and there were, and still, even though there were, you're right, they were purchased by Amgen, they still function in a way as an independent entity. So they still, when they publish, when Carrie Stephenson, the CEO, published, and the team at Decode, they still publish as Decode, and they continue doing all kinds of association studies, all kinds of large genomic studies. Actually, they did now the last super large project they did was to sequence. They were one of the two sequencer or centers that sequence the 500,000 samples from the UK Biobank, which is a huge project in collaboration with with several pharma companies, Amgen, one of them, of course. But then Decode was the one that generated the sequencing data, and that, of course, is mining and analyzing and cranking all this data. So yeah, it's quite. I would say, that when I put that in perspective, it was a bold move. My partner actually was the one pushing me to go there. I was like, Reykjavik, like, from all places on earth, would I go to work? I'm Colombian. I'm a tropical woman. Would I go to the North Pole? In my mind, this is the North Pole to work in genetics. And we ended up loving the country. And now it's like, everybody wants to go to Iceland and see the volcanoes, see the glaciers, see the amazing, outdoors landscapes and everything. But that bold movement really, it was a wild card and a bold movement that after that opened so many doors. It was like a, presentation card. Like when I went to Eli Lilly, I think Eli Lilly hired me because of my Decode experience, not because of, any PhD in Belgium or any, masters in France or anything.
Oh, I could talk with you all day about genomics and your experience in genomics, but I think Susan has a question really digging more into your recent diagnosis. Sorry, I'm very hard transit, the left turn here, but Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll change it topics a bit, but both are kind of the same topic. One kind of plays with the other. But yeah, I was wondering if you could share the moment you were diagnosed with breast cancer and how it impacted you personally and professionally.
Yeah, and it's exactly what we're experiencing here. I was in that all excitement of being CSO at Genome Canada, and after the pandemic, getting my new role of CSO, and working at a pan Canadian level, and starting to be more concentrated on international partnerships and all these. When actually March last year, 2023, I detected a lump in my breast. And initially, like we all, think, oh, this is going to be nothing. I got my mammography 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So 22, no, actually 8 months before I had a mammography that was not normal. So I was like, oh, I got a recent mammography. I have been very diligent with my, screenings. There's no reason why this is going to turn bad or be a bad lump. Sure enough, I got the mammography. I got then the ultrasound because it wasn't clear, and they did an ultrasound guided biopsy. And I, like every cancer patient, I think, you get really mark in your brain the day you hear that word cancer. that always in my mind as a medical doctor, as a genomic scientist, and in I think all our minds is a word that for others is never for ourselves. Like, when you hear that to you, saying you have cancer, oh my God, the world spins. And I remember I was on my way to the airport. I live in Lions Bay, so a bit far away from the city. I was on my way to the airport, and I got a call from my family doctor saying, "Oh, your doctor wants to see you in person on Friday," and that was a Tuesday. And I say, "Well, if the doctor wants to see me in person, this is not good news. The doctor doesn't invite you to the office when they have good news to give you." So I decided, like everything in my life, a bold movement. I turned the car, and instead of going to the airport, I say I'm going to go and sit down at my doctor's office, and I'm going to try and see my doctor right now. They have my diagnosis. They have my because I tried to get information on the phone. Of course, they will not give you any information. So I went to the doctor, and sure enough, she as soon as she knew I was there, she could see me, give me my diagnosis, the world spinning. And what did I do? I took the plane and went to Saskatchewan to the meeting I had to go because I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, you don't know how to handle. I, I called my partner and say, I was crying. I called, of course, our CEO and say, look at what happened. I don't even know what to do, but I don't feel like staying at home now. And like this is too much for me. I need to think about something else. I need to put my head around. So yeah, but it's a tough moment when you get your diagnosis.
Very tough. Yeah, your whole world stops, and you wish it was yesterday when you weren't diagnosed, because from this moment on, it will never be the same.
Exactly. Nothing is the same, and then you get into a journey of full of unknowns in a way.
It's I don't want to put you in any uncomfortable situation, because this is very much a conversation. I'm wondering if you're willing to kind of share your what was your, not a journey as a cancer patient. I don't want to put it that way, but could you walk through like what happens when you get your diagnosis, and then sort of the things that you have to advocate for yourself, throughout the process? Because in our previous conversations, Catalina, you talked about a lot of the work that you do now from an advocacy side of things, which is now you have an extra hat on, right? Not only leading scientists, right? Now you have a patient advocate on top of that as well. So would you be okay with walking us through kind of your diagnosis to today? What was that? What has been that journey?
Yeah, absolutely, Lester. And so very soon after my diagnosis, well, first there is this shock, and you're just like trying to understand and navigate through the initial to get your full diagnosis, which is already a journey. I remember, when they get your first biomarkers and they tell you, how advanced it is or not. It takes time. That time is for me the most painful part of the process, because it's like you're there, you don't know. Exactly, and exactly out of control. And I was used to, in my job, in everything. I'm a, in a way, control freak. I would say, maybe not that extreme, but I like controlling things. And I my job, I control this. And here I was like the patient, and I was at the other side, and I was like no control on the timing, no control on anything. So that piece was very, very hard. But I remember my first appointment with the surgeon, because I had surgery first. And my first appointment with the surgeon, I had, of course, as a medical doctor and as a scientist, for good or for bad, you know a lot. And if you don't know, you search. And as you did, Susan, you start to research. I start, reading about, I knew a lot. And funny enough, one of the examples I always gave in my presentations as CSO in Genome Quebec, in Genome BC, talking about precision medicine and saying that, precision medicine is here and genomics is in the clinic right now and all these amazing things, I always talk about breast cancer and the examples on how we're personalizing, refining diagnosis with genomics and personalizing treatment based on your genomic profiling. So here I was with my surgeon, getting my first appointment, and I remember, I was there like, how can I get Oncotype DX? How can I get, a profiling of my tumor? Is it possible to already, I had all my genomics questions, and that continues to today, and I can, tell you the different steps into that genomic testing journey, because that has been really a critical part for me, and a part that I'm really, as you say, Lester, trying to advocate, because I think even though we have more and more tests and options of the use of genomics in the cancer journey, not just for breast cancer, but in general in the cancer journey, we still have big differences in this country and even inside a province. Like me being in Vancouver is one thing as opposed to a person from an indigenous community in the north, far north of BC. How much access will they have to that test, and how much will they know to, ask for the test? Like I was asking my doctor in every appointment about the test they could do in my tumor, like the profiling of the tumor, or what could they do to understand my constitutional DNA in the blood and understand what hereditary cancer genes I had, to now trying to get access that I still don't have to circulating tumor DNA. So I have been through this journey advocating, and one decision that I made early on in the process um, was to be very public about it. And so I start writing blogs, publishing my journey in Twitter, in social media, and writing about and giving sometimes talks and presentations about the journey, which when I think now is it was a way for me to also find the purpose and be able to share this with others, and has been rewarding in the sense that I already had two or three actually young women that came to me to say that because of my postings and because all the sharing and articles and blogs and everything I share on social media, when they detected a lump in their breast, they really took that serious. And these three young women, younger than 40, are now in the process of getting their chemotherapy and their treatment for breast cancer, that maybe they will not have taken seriously if they didn't see, openly that journey share in so many different places and ways. So it's rewarding in that sense, but it's also challenging, because of course you get good comments, you get bad comments, and it's demanding. And when you're in this, of course, I had the surgery. I then had chemotherapy, the full blown 8 cycles of the heavy chemo for breast cancer. Lost my hair. Now I'm starting to, grow my hair back. Get radiotherapy too, and now I'm on just the medications that they will give me, just. Hormone inhibitors and all these that they give you for 5 years. So I'll still have to be on those medications for 5 years to reduce the risk of recurrency. But as I say, it's a bold movement, but it's also the opportunity for me to give a voice to many cancer patients that don't have that voice. So allowing other people to present their stories. I have interviewed a couple of people that, I'm trying not to be the voice, but give a voice.
Yeah, voice and giving that knowledge to patients. And I know, being on both sides of the coin, when I was diagnosed, I was not a scientist at the time, and then graduating and now talking to my doctors, it's very different. So, for the average patient, it's very difficult for them to present doctors, hey, can you profile my tumor or my blood, and half the time they're not sure what quite they're talking about, so doctors maybe don't take them as seriously, and so it's unfortunate. But what advice would you give patients that want their tumor profiled, to know which biomarkers they could have that could be treated, but it's not covered by standard of care, but they want to still go ahead and see the results of that?
Before you do that, sorry to interrupt here. Great question. But before you do that, could you explain what a like I Susan knows and I know what profiling is and what biomarker is, but just for the rest of the audience, because this is very much meant for everyone. Could you explain what is a biomarker and how that has anything to do with the word profiling? Just a quick explanation, those two, that'd be really great.
Absolutely. And I can explain a little bit, the difference also between analyzing your tumor and analyzing your blood. So basically, when we talk about biomarkers and genomic profiling in the tumor, is you take a sample of your tumor and you look at different genes that are involved with cancer development. And you see if there are any mutations or changes in those genes, and that help you, that guides, basically refines the diagnosis. So you use these biomarkers to really as we say, the first biomarkers I got, just as an example, is the ones that everybody gets in breast cancer. And as a friend of mine told me, is basically you get your first name of your what you have, breast cancer, first name, and then you get the last names, which is estrogen receptor positive, progesterone receptor positive, Herceptin or HER2 negative. So those are the three last names of my tumor. In Colombia, we use so many last names, so we're used to having a name and many last names. So these are the three last names, and then from there you go into other biomarkers that you can get with your genomic profiling. Basically, sequencing and looking at the different genes and how they change, what mutations they have, and that again give other characterizations of that tumor that help you refine your diagnosis. So once you have a more clear diagnosis and understanding also, and some of the tests help you understand the prognosis. Prognosis mean, how you will evolve, how much risk of recurrence. Basically, how much risk do I have to develop another tumor in 5 years? Because we know, some of the women that get breast cancer, they might get a tumor in the other breast 5 years later, or maybe a metastasis to the lungs or to the brain or to the bones in 5 or 10 years. So what is the likelihood to have those recurrences or those metastases in a few years? So all that we can see now with our genes, with the genomics of the tumor. So you basically do that analysis in the tumor and understand how it behaves. And in my case, well, I have to say that when I first got the diagnosis, because I come from the world of genomics, my initial thing was that I contact the people that are leading an initiative here in BC that's called the Personalized Oncogenomics Initiative, POG, POG. So the Personalized Oncogenomics is basically doing full genome sequencing. So the 3 billion letters of the genome, they read the 3 billion letters of your tumor, and they read the 3 billion letters of your blood and compare that and see what mutations are there. So this is basically, you get the entire book of, the entire reading of the encyclopedia of your tumor. And that's kind of the best of the best of the best. And when I asked, I remember, the specialist or the person that's working in that project told me, like, I have good news and bad news for you. The good news is your tumor is too early. So you were catched, too early. Bad news, because I'm stage 2B, which is, I have a lump in my breast, I have a lymph node, but I don't have, the lump is not too big, and I don't have many lymph nodes. So with that, I say it's too early. That's the good news for you, because you're not, your tumor is not too advanced. Bad news is we cannot do the sequencing on your tumor, because we only sequence people that are stage 4. So good news, bad news. So going back to your question, Lester, so that's what you do in the tumor. And then you can also look at the genes in your blood. And that you don't need a sample of your tumor, but you need just a simple blood sample. And for that blood, you will look at what we call the hereditary cancer genes. So the genes you have in your body, in your constitutional, we call it constitutional DNA, and what you have in your body as genes that give you more susceptibility to uh, just have cancer. And those typically you inherit from your parents. They come and run in families, and that's why it's important for you to maybe test, know if there's other cancer cases in your family, and that will have implications also in your offspring if you have kids or your nephews or your family overall, brothers, sisters, all that. So that in my case here in Canada, I got the Oncotype DX, which is basically the profiling of the tumor. That was part of the standard of care. So I managed in a way, I started asking the oncologist, and I will answer your question, Suzan, in a bit on how, what I recommend for patients and how to approach these. But I basically started asking the oncologist, and she told me, oh, you can enter a clinical trial. I signed, all the paperwork, enter a clinical trial, and got the profiling of my tumor with a test that's called Oncotype DX. But there are many others, Mama Print, others that have slightly different functions. But at the end, what they do is guide, refine your diagnosis and guide your treatment. In my case, um, just also, for the little story, the Oncotype DX, the score, when I was score, I was reading what is the score, how you classify that. Say if you got a score of 25 or less, you don't need chemotherapy. If you get a score of 25 or more, you need chemotherapy. So imagine you get a genetic test that guides your clinician, your oncologist, to decide if you need chemotherapy or not. So women that will have less than 25, forget it. This is great. This is the best news ever. You don't need chemotherapy. You can go from surgery to radiotherapy, bang, bang, really. You don't have to go through all the hassle. And you save money, if we think about, save money to the healthcare system, but also save you as a patient all the side effects and horrible things that, you know, chemotherapy is great. Yeah, kills your tumor, but it's also super hard on your body and your mind and everything. So having that opportunity to really save some women from that, I think is brilliant. In my case, my score, I just laughed because I was, life is what it is, but my score was 26. So not 25, not 24, I was 26. And I got my test before I went to see the oncologist. And so I had time to reflect. And I was like thinking maybe, 26 is really close to 25. And, maybe I will just go without chemotherapy. But sure enough, I went and my oncologist saying, no, I think we need to be, 100% here. We're going to go with chemotherapy. It's 26. And we have other indications. Your lymph node was very big, whatever, many other, of course, because it is, nothing is interpreted, in isolation. Everything makes part of your whole story and your clinical story. And that's why also, when we think about, well, I'll get back to the patient empowerment, but I'll add one thing here, is that test, again, was critical to define if I have chemo or not. Bad news for me, I had to get chemotherapy. But then when I asked the doctor, can I get, as I call the Angelina Jolie test, the BRCA1, BRCA2, the hereditary cancer panel that tells me if this runs in my family, she basically saying, no, this is not covered by the healthcare system because you don't have any sisters, any close relatives, your mom or your aunts. Nobody in your family has breast cancer. You are, just a single case. So in that case, there is no indication, and the healthcare system will not cover the test for you. But me being, a scientist, a genomicist, I say, well, I really want to know that. She gave me the option to pay it out of pocket. So I enrolled and I paid, and I did it with a company actually in the US, which is quite sad because we have lots of capabilities here to do that. We should be able to do the hereditary cancer panel in Canada. Why? And that's another debate that we can spend 1 hour on. But yeah, I sent my sample to the US, got my results. Luckily, and good news, I didn't have any hereditary cancer genes, so no worries for my family. And it was good there. But in some cases, you have to navigate that piece of what is covered, what is not covered, and how you can try and get access. And one thing I would say for the patients, Suzan, is that sometimes people get really scared and stressed because the complexity. Oh, what is this genomic profiling? What type of test? What do I need to get? And I always say, you don't need to be, you don't need to have a PhD. You don't need to be a genomicist. You just need to really, at a high level, be aware that they can do an analysis of the DNA of your tumor. They can do an analysis of the DNA of your blood, and that can help you really guide your diagnosis and your treatment. But I'm also super surprised. I'm in a couple of, for good or for bad, Facebook forums. I don't recommend these, but they're I found it in a way is helpful because I don't know that many women with breast cancer. I only have two close friends or people close to me that I could ask questions. But a lot of the questions you have about your side effects of chemo, these groups are like, phew, there's all kinds of good information, all kinds of crap information, all kinds of scary things, but also. So I use I actually I was curious to know if this woman because I'm in a group in the US or more global, and another one that is just Canadian. So I ask the questions in both. I share my story and I say, well, I got my profiling of my tumor with Oncotype DX and I got the hereditary cancer panel. I wanted to know if those women, in a way, knew the difference between the two. If they, or if you just say, because I remember asking friends if they got any genomic testing out in Colombia, and all of them will talk about the hereditary cancer panel. None of them will talk about the profiling of your tumor. So that indicated to me that people are not giving the option of profiling your tumor. Whereas in the Facebook groups in Canada, I was surprised. People knew about their Oncotype DX or MammaPrint. They knew the scores. They knew when they needed chemotherapy or not. There were, people start reading. I mean, and it's at the end of the day, you get an amazing team for your care in oncology. You get the oncologist, you get the surgeon, you get the radiologist, you get the nurses. But who is putting all these dots together? Is you, is the patient, because
Exactly.
they all get pieces and bits of your
Yeah.
story. The
Yeah.
only
And they're
one.
they're busy, they're seeing many patients, and yeah, you have to be your own advocate. And that's the first thing I tell patients. And some patients don't want to hear that. They want to just put it in the hands of their doctors, which is fine, but if you have a difficult disease, or if you want to ensure that everything's getting checked off, you have to be your own advocate and you have to go out and get that information out there. And for myself, I was the one that found this phase 1 trial, and I know most phase 1 trials don't, that was the Gleevec trial. Most of them fail, and that's what my doctors told me. They said, no, you don't want to be a guinea pig. It's going to fail. So I had to contact the doctor in charge of that clinical trial in Portland, Oregon, and that's where things started from there. But yeah, so it's that's a lot more than patients usually have to do, but being educated about your disease is really important, and to ask the important questions to your doctor.
Exactly, exactly. And as you say, Susan, your oncologist sees you 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And well, we're lucky that they see us frequently, but it's 20 minutes, it's 15 minutes. And you manage to say so much in those. So I always say, be prepared, read, get the information, ask, don't be afraid to ask. And the other thing, and I speak as a medical doctor myself, doctors are humans. They also make mistakes. They also forget. They don't have in their brains all the information. They are not artificial intelligence machines that have all the information right in the fingertips. So it's only you that will be able to tell them and say, what about this? What about that? And don't be afraid to ask several times until you get, or don't be afraid to go see somebody else. I have full trust in my oncologist, full trust. I really, think she got everything. She's really at the cutting edge. She has the knowledge and everything. But even though I trust her 200%, I went to consult two other oncologists
Wow.
to see, did
Not
I
many
get.
patients do that. Yeah. Because you don't want to insult your doctor and you're scared to do that, but it's your life, right? So, and you
Is
need
your
to, even if
life.
you just feel confident at, okay, I'm getting the right treatment, you should do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Even I remember I read an article about a new medication that's a CDK4 CDK6 inhibitor that it was initially prescribed for women with metastatic breast cancer, so quite advanced stage 4, but now is being prescribed for early stage cases, in certain cases of aggressive tumors. um, And I remember talking to an oncologist out of McGill and say, well, look, I sent all my clinical information. I sent all my files to that doctor. And, we were having an informal discussion, and he actually is putting together he was putting together a grant to help give second opinions to patients with cancer from, that come with, that have limited resources or limited, which I think is a brilliant project because, as you say, we are always afraid to ask. We don't even know. But if there was an organization that non for profit will give patients the opportunity to ask and say, this is my case, this is what I have. Well, this doctor told me, yeah, I think you will greatly benefit from CDK4. So even before my doctor here started thinking about prescribing that, I asked her, what about CDK4, CDK6? And she was like, oh, yeah, we might be able to, but as a patient, you are the one again that has all these information and that is able to put the dots together. um, I would say, in my case, second opinions, because I trusted my oncologist and I trust my oncologist. In some other cases, and I share a story about actually another woman from Latin America, from Dominican Republic, and I've heard that story. That's an example of a story I've heard already several times. Unfortunately, is a sad story, but this is a woman that detected a lump in her breast, went to the family doctor, and the family doctor said, this is nothing, and sent her back home and didn't
Wow.
send a mammography. And of course, you trust your doctor. You say, okay, if the family doctor says nothing, it's nothing.
Yeah. And you
I
want to
remember
feel like it's nothing. You're like, oh, okay, good.
you
I'm
you
relieved.
don't want
Yeah.
exactly, you
Yeah.
want somebody because your brain
Yeah.
is saying it's nothing. And I
Yeah.
remember my doctor initially say, well, there is 99% probability that is nothing. And this lump, she say, I remember in my case, is not really attached. And and I say, well, I think it's attached in my perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's attached, and I'm really scared. So, I think my doctor from the get-go, my family doctor, was planning to send me to a mammography, but I did push also on my side and say, I really want this to, we need to look at this woman, Doris, that I wrote the blog about, went to see three family doctors. And at one point, with the third one, she already had family history. She had a lump in her breast with an aunt and a sister with breast cancer and still didn't get a mammography in BC. This is not in, Africa. This is in Canada. This is in British Columbia. Yeah, she was on a small remote town, but regardless, everywhere, you should be able to get your diagnosis. So I think don't be afraid also as a patient to, in a way, question or challenge or go and look for second opinions. And if you're worried, because in her case, she had pain, She had really changes in the skin. So she had all the signs and she was really worried, and yet not getting a referral for the mammography. So I think it's important. We are now in the times where, doctors are always, brilliant and really a critical component of our healthcare system. But I think patients really are at the center of everything we do at the healthcare system. So
No, that's there's so many threads there to really pull on. But the one that I'm curious about, just because we started with your role as a in Genome Canada, now going through your journey as a cancer patient, do you do you think differently about how you maybe in the future, how like what projects make sense, because now you see like the like you had mentioned this idea of capabilities in Canada, like we have these capabilities in Canada, but you still have to send it out to the US, which is, that's a different, that's maybe we don't go down that road, but I think you get my sense. Is like there's obviously still gaps in Canada that should be relatively straightforward to solve. So does it change your mindset on how Genome Canada functions, at least for maybe the cancer research component or more around the cancer component?
oh, completely, Lester, completely. And not just for cancer, for everything, because your experience as a patient, I can totally relate now to rare disease patients. Families and kids with rare diseases that are navigating what we call the diagnostic odyssey, and going from one specialist to another one, and one to another one to another one, until they get finally the whole genome sequence, and they figure out what is the mutation. They get a diagnosis finally, and in some cases they might not even get the option of a treatment because it's a rare disease that might not have a treatment. But just having a diagnosis makes a whole difference. Now, the lesson for me and a CSO at Genome Canada is really that we have still a way to go to um, to really, have this full implementation of genomics in the clinic. And as I say, as you mentioned there, we have the capacity here, we have the knowledge, we have the scientific expertise, but we still have, in a way, this disconnect with the clinic. I think it's better and it's getting better. And I think breast cancer is one of these areas where is most advanced because there are so many options of your, pro- profiling your tumor, getting your, now you're also circulating tumor DNA might be an option. I got my microbiome. I forgot to mention that I got a study on my microbiome. So I've been in different studies and I'm seeing, the power of that. Um, I also will say that in my role, not just at Genome Canada, but also with the Genome Centers, I remember in my presentations, always I have my my personalized medicine and genomics slide deck, and always that will finish with slide that has a patient at the center and everything around. And I say, of course, we have to have patients at the center. That was always what I was presenting. Now, yes, but it's like a whole. I feel it. It's the same concept, but I just feel it completely differently. Like, we were saying we have, as we call, research oversight committees for the large scale projects we found at Genome Canada. And we always say, it would be nice to have a patient there. And now it's like, no, it's not nice to have a patient. It's like we have to have a patient. It's a must. It's not a nice thing to have, it's a must. And I'm lucky enough to be in a position with Genome Canada to somewhat try to help and influence some of those decisions. So I'm really, because as you say, Suzan, you were diagnosed 26 years ago. You're a cancer patient today, and you still, think, live. You're a cancer survivor, and you think and live your life through that lens. So I think that's a new lens that I got, cancer survivor, that I'm planning to fully use as a voice for patients and as a voice for genomics in Canada. So it's not going to be the same, Lester. It's not going to be the same.
That's excellent to hear, and I'm sure many of our listeners, and also actually many of our former guests, actually there were patient advocates. We had Barry Stein on, who leads Colorectal Cancer Canada, who himself was a cancer patient that had to he had to go to court against the Quebec government. So I think having more patient advocates is absolute must. And I know we don't want to take too much more of your time. It's already been like 50 minutes, and I know you're very very busy in your day. So I'll maybe ask with so one of our sort of final question, and it kind of flows into many of the things you talked about already, including the patient voice. But you also talked about this individual, Doris, you had mentioned, who is actually maybe more of a remote, in a remote city in British Columbia. And you are also, sorry, I want to get this right. You're also you work at an organization, or you run an organization called International Immigrant Women in Science, for gender equality in science. So a lot of your work is obviously advocating for equity amongst people from different places, right? You're yourself Colombian, and there's obviously discrepancies in terms of knowledge from, as you mentioned, in those Facebook groups between, say, someone in North America versus someone's, like you had mentioned, Colombia, in terms of knowledge of genomics. How do you think about health equity in your work, or as a patient advocate, or even as obviously as CSO of Genome Canada?
Yes, well, you touch, a very sensitive topic there, Lester, because that's something I have been, in a way, working on as CSO at Genome Canada for a while, and even at Genome BC and Genome Quebec, trying to work with international organizations to really just promote and support having more diversity in just genomic data sets, because most of the genomic data sets internationally are about 90% Caucasian populations, white Caucasian populations from North America, Europe. Those are the prominent or predominant samples that are in those international databases. So genomics, as I say, has a diversity problem, and that diversity problem really translates into, not being able to develop proper diagnosis for people that are from other ethnicities, not able to guide the treatment for people that are from other ethnic groups, minorities, and so on. So that has been my passion already for a while, and now it brings this other dimension with Doris' story, with my own story, with my friends that I have in Colombia, and people that I know diagnosed with breast cancer in Africa, in South America, and in remote regions in BC, in Canada, that we have an access and an equity challenge with our healthcare system, a big time. And it's not just about genomics, it's about this equity and possibility for access of new technologies and treatments. So that's also something I will continue working and collaborating. And if people that are listening to these podcasts are interested and passionate about it, I am really here to work with you and really join forces. I think there is a lot we need to work, and again, my eyes are now as a patient open really to this new reality that is challenging, but I think it gives us also the opportunity to make a difference. I think we have the opportunity to really help increase access, and in particular, of course, my passion, genomics. I just can't imagine, and you know I can accept, I would say, I can imagine, yes, I can accept that now we have this amazing technology that only a handful of people living in big cities will have access directly. So I think it's important to be able to show that, we can give access to the healthcare, and we can give access to these new technologies to people around the world, and in remote regions and resource limited regions in Canada, as well as around the globe.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Actually, Catalina, out of curiosity, in terms of, because you talked a lot about the social media platforms you use, like Facebook or Twitter. Do you find that kind of surprising that I don't want to put down those organizations, but those apps seem very, like, it's meant for like fun, entertainment, but it seems like you're using them in a really great way of providing education. Do you find that kind of interesting, that you're able to talk to people all around the world on just your phone, basically, and be able to provide education?
Yeah, it has been quite interesting, and interesting to see the reaction of people and how engaged people are and willing to really learn. One of my last postings that I put based on a Nature article and podcast was about how the nomenclature, how we call cancers based on their organs. And then we say breast cancer, and then we say prostate cancer, and we say lung cancer. And we historically are stick to this anatomical location of your cancer, which is not related to the molecular structure or molecular composition of your cancer. And now what guides your treatment is the DNA and the molecular profiling, as opposed to, I might have the same treatment because my molecular, my cancer is developing very fast and has certain molecular and mutations and molecular characteristics. I might have the same treatment as a prostate cancer patient, and maybe another woman with breast cancer might have a completely different. But with the two of us, we have breast cancer, we have different treatments. I share the same or very similar treatments or some medications with a guy that has prostate cancer. So it's not about so I put that posting, and in simple words, I put it on Facebook and I put it on LinkedIn. And it was interesting because in my I guess my network in LinkedIn is maybe, you know I would say, coming from the world of research and the world of oncology and the world of genomics and all that. So people were like, yes, 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 totally agree. We need to. So lots of people actually from Quebec and people that Gerald Baptiste and many others were like, oh yeah, supporting. Whereas in Facebook, people were like, oh wow, I never thought about that this way. Like I never thought that, it's completely outdated and it's completely now out of, in a way, context to call tumors by their location as opposed to their DNA composition or their molecular profiling. So it's also interesting to see how far you can reach, Lester, but also how different these platforms are and how different reactions you get, and how, you know it, how you can educate differently. So in this example, I got all the support and people, yeah, relying forces and saying, yes, we should go, and we are with you, and we are, with this article and these, whereas the other ones were like, oh, this is a learning opportunity. And so yeah, it's quite interesting to see how you can manage the, and how you can reach to incredible audiences.
Great, great, great. Thank you very much, Catalina, for joining us today. If you do want to see some of Catalina's work, where can people find you, Catalina? So you said you mentioned you had a blog. Is it a personal blog or is it on Genome Canada?
No, actually, is through LinkedIn. So when you look at my profile, all the articles I wrote, blogs, I call them blogs, but they're not really. There are articles as part of LinkedIn. They have a function that is really easy, and then I share them on Twitter. I share them on Facebook. I share them in different platforms, but I write them in LinkedIn.
Perfect, perfect. And if you do want to follow Catalina on Twitter, I'm just looking up your Twitter right now. It's at C Lopez Correa. So CLOPEZ CORREA on Twitter. So thanks again, Catalina, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for watching this podcast. Thank you, Suzan, for joining me as our special co-host for this very special episode. And if you do like this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and please provide comments below as well. Provide us feedback, or if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments below. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.